Alright, hello everyone, and welcome back to another Limbus Company video. Today we're going to be checking out the brand new Reflection game mode that was just released. I said game mode, but it's basically just a buffed up version of the Intervallo boss. It's still technically a game mode, and it is also technically new content, which is a miracle that we finally got something after nearly a few years of nothing but the mirror dungeon. Breath of fresh air, I'll say that much. So I guess the main question is, what exactly did they do to this boss? And I can't tell you any specifics because I didn't really read the passives in true Project Moon fan fashion. But from what I can tell, they basically just gave her a lot of extra, like, status effect application, specifically bleed and sinking. Like, there's just a lot of passive damage in this fight. Because every single character, they effectively inflict bleed and sinking count on you whenever they attack you, and because of the amount of unbreakable coins in this fight, that's basically every single attack, you constantly keep gaining extra bleed count. That and the fact that there is just a lot more health in this fight in order to facilitate the fact that you have the potential to beat this fight using up to 3 different teams. There's also the fact that every single status effect, with the exception of, you know, the self status effects of like charge and poise, have been absolutely nerfed to the ground in this fight. It takes me a while to actually realize this up until like the second phase of this fight, because I'm not really focusing on bleed in the first half because it's kind of impossible to actually build status effects in the first phase of the fight. And that is because of Rufo's passive to have the first 2 attacks that target her redirect into one of her allies. And because of that, it becomes really difficult to actually build a bleed stack on her, or any status effect on her, because the first 2 attacks are never going to attack her at all, unless every single minion is dead. So the fact that it's difficult to actually attack Rufo and apply status effects onto her, and the fact that every status effect has been nerfed, that is honestly the main reason why this fight becomes so much harder. Especially because of the degree they've been nerfed to. Every one of the negative status effects, they have a cap of 30 potency and 10 count. Which, specifically in this fight, that's really, really bad for bleed. Especially in the second half of this fight, Rufo has so many unbreakable coins that you basically need to apply upwards of 6 bleed count per skill in order to maintain a bleed stack. And for that reason, it simultaneously makes bleed the best status effect for this fight, and also one of the worst, and it's entirely dependent on whether or not you have access to Rhodia's Sanguine Desire ego. Because that ego allows you to bypass the sheer number of unbreakable coins that Rufo has and allow you to maintain a bleed stack with a lot less bleed count, even with it being so substantially small of a bleed stack at only 30 potency. But it really adds up. I mean, in that second phase, she has one skill that has 3 coins. All of the coins are unbreakable most of the time. And that means that the bleed stack triggers 6 times for one singular skill, which is about 180 damage for one attack. And considering the fact that every status effect has been nerfed to the ground in this fight, that's still pretty significant. That's a significant chunk of damage for a single skill. But of course, maintaining that is next to impossible without Sanguine Desire, so yeah, I would say the best way to beat this fight is either using the Ring or Blood Fiend, since they're the two main bleed archetypes at the moment. And they both have a Rhodia identity. And then you also have to have Sanguine Desire, which is not that easily accessible as it is a Walpurgis ego. But if you have it, Bleed is by far the best status effect for this fight in particular. Also, I'd just like to mention right here, I made a really, really big mistake in this fight. Because I had assumed that Rufo was finished summoning minions, right? And so I decided I'm just going to play into the gimmick here and use a bunch of defense skills to prevent her critique from actually being able to reuse coins, because if you use a defense skill, it cancels her ability to reuse coins on that, which is very good because otherwise she almost always gets to reuse it at least once. And even if you happen to win a clash with it, it still does a lot of damage, so you're better off using a defense skill no matter what if you're trying to survive. But the reason why this was a mistake is because I had thought that Rufo was finished summoning minions because no minions appeared on that turn, but I guess they just can't appear on that turn. And as a result, the next turn, she resummoned her minions, and of course that reactivates her passive, where the first couple of attacks get redirected into the minions. And that's very bad because it means that we take an extra, like, 2 turns unnecessarily here in order to beat this first phase. So the most optimal play was actually to clash against all of her critiques and use Sanguine Desire early so that we could actually build a bleed stack and be able to knock her down into the second phase as quickly as possible there, but didn't do that, and first phase gets extended like 2 extra turns because of it. Unfortunate, but what can you do? I do also want to just take a brief tangent and mention how bad the worst status effect has become in this fight, because it has been equally nerfed, and that is Burn. Now, Burn on its own is not that strong of a status effect, even with the max of 99 potency, as it can only ever really achieve upwards of like maybe 1,000 extra damage per turn, which compared to the other status effects, that's honestly nothing. But it's still pretty good, right? It's still decent enough to warrant actually using. However, that is dependent on you having a max 99 burn stack and a max 7 Dark Flame application, which again also is dependent on Walpurgis, but that's beside the point. However, in this fight, where the burn potency is capped out at 30, that maximum damage goes all the way down from nearly 1,000 to barely 240. It is ridiculously weak burn. Ridiculously weak. I mean, I literally just mentioned that a single skill in the second phase with bleed damage does like 180. That's one skill. It does basically the same amount of damage that burn does at its maximum potential. And that is honestly sad how much burn has been just absolutely gutted in this fight. It's ridiculous. I mean, granted, it is incentivized for you to actually use bleed, because you do get a lot of buffs for using the ring specifically with this fight, so it's definitely not recommended to use burn in the first place, but like, oh my god, the nerf to it is just, you gotta be on something if you're trying to use burn in this fight. Other than that, the only real thing I can really say about this fight is that it is very dependent on winning clashes. And it's like, obviously, you know, you want to win clashes as much as possible, but I would say, arguably, losing even a single clash in this fight, especially later on, like early on it can be acceptable, but later on, losing even a single clash is very, very detrimental, because all of the random chip damage that you're constantly taking in the fight makes it so that you're very, very close to being staggered, like almost always. And so if you just happen to randomly lose a single clash at some point, then yeah, Rufo is going to end up staggering you, and being staggered is almost a guaranteed death sentence in this fight. It's not quite a death sentence. You can work around it, especially if you have characters like, you know, Ring Hong Lu and Faust, as they do have assist defenses, which are very helpful when dealing with staggers in particular. But in any case, you do want to avoid getting staggered or I should say, you do want to avoid losing clashes as much as possible. Because even though they have unbreakable coins, all of the unbreakable coins, they specifically say that they cannot stagger you if you win a clash. Or if they lose a clash. And now we are in the second phase, which this is where I finally figure out that, yeah, the bleed stack has been nerfed to the ground, and it's still very strong because of how many unbreakable coins there are. Honestly, the unbreakable coins are what make bleed so powerful. Without those, it wouldn't be nearly as strong as it is, but regardless, entering the second phase is also a very, very dangerous event. Because every single character gets hit with 8 potency and count of both sinking and bleed. Which if they already have a pretty sizable amount of either of those, then yeah, they get added on top of that, and it means you get hit with you instantly get hit with a 64 completely unavoidable damage upon entering the second phase. Luckily, this bleed and sinking potency, it only applies when you enter the second phase. So for any of the subsequent teams that you enter into the fight with, they don't actually gain these effects, but it's unavoidable the first time you enter it. Also, nice random missed 10% chance right there. Just absolutely kills everybody. Thanks, Ishmael. It definitely sucks. That missed coin there is definitely really bad because, yeah, it means that this next turn is effectively entirely wasted, because if Ishmael actually won that clash and everybody survived, then I could have used another Sanguine Desire, and that's a whole extra turn of just maximum bleed damage for free. Would have definitely chunked Rufo down a whole lot more than the literally nothing that she's taking right now. It's like this turn is entirely wasted, 100% wasted. And for the second team, we're using my absolute favorite of the Envy Resonance / semi-charge based team composition. It's honestly really difficult to beat this fight in with only a single team. I definitely think it is possible. I could have done it if I just played a little better and got a little luckier with Ishmael's, Harder Blossom Star. Because there's basically 2 full turns in this entire thing. Because there was the first turn where I misplayed and allowed her to summon extra minions when I should have used Sanguine Desire and built up a bleed stack and knocked her down into the second phase early. That would have shaved off 2 extra turns. And then if Ishmael won the clash with Ardor Blossom, then Rodeo probably would have survived the turn, and we would have been able to use Sanguine Desire and had another entire full turn of bleed damage going off. And then because of the extra 2 turns from earlier, there would have been more than enough time to just be able to get the extra 1,000 damage done to Rufo in the first team. So with a bit of better play and a bit of better luck, I do believe I could have actually beaten this with only the ring team and just the ring team, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. And so we get to use this second team, which honestly, this team is not that good. The main reason why I chose to use it is because I at this point I found out about the nerf to the status effects, and so I tried to use a team that doesn't actually care about status effects. However, this team doesn't really, it's not very good, I'd say, considering the fact that the middle, specifically, they like to use counter skills. And counter skills are not very good in this fight, let me just say that much. Now, obviously, they counter the bleed damage that Rufo does, because defense skills don't trigger bleed damage. But they don't counter the sinking damage. And because of how much sinking damage you constantly take, using even a single counter skill almost would guarantee a corrosion. So, definitely counterintuitive, not very good in this fight. And that definitely contributed to the main reason why this second team just doesn't perform nearly as good as the first. It's because obviously they're not using bleed, which bleed is the best in this fight. But it's also because they just can't really use their gimmicks very well. I don't really think I have anything else to really comment on in this fight, so I'll just let the rest of it play out. Ultimately, though, I could have definitely shaved an extra... I could have probably got it below 12 turns if I really tried, but... You know, sub 20 is fine in my opinion.
한눈 팔지 마세요. 메말은 당신에게 파도는 반드시 밀려올 테니.
방금 했던 공격은 매우 효과적이었어. 하지만 아직 부족해. 다음 공격은 더 잘할 수 있도록.
해잔병같이 무릎을 꿇고 있을 때인가 13번 수감자.
내가 쓸모가 있으려면 지키기 위해서.
한눈 팔지 마세요. 메말은 당신에게 파도는 반드시 밀려올 테니.
상담에서 알려준 대로 잘했어. 역시 상담 프로그램을 진행한 건 자랑이지.
얼얼하지?
새끼!
지원하지.
호드가 말한 대로 방어적인 대응은 확실히 전면전보다 피해는 적고.
재밌겠는데?
쓸데없는 관심 필요 없다. 떠돌아가는 길에서
이게 어떻게 되신 일인가, 보관 선생.
차 부숴줄 테다.
지키기 위해서. 나도 지킬 게 많거든.
있는 힘껏 찔러놓고 으깨놨지만 저것들은 언젠가 다시 재생하겠지.
Anyway, that's it for me. Like and subscribe for more videos like this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.